Hello, welcome back to Casablanca. In this episode, I will be talking about San Francisco, which is the city that I live in. We will be talking about the city that I live in today for this episode. Also, it's the name of a 1936 film. Directed by W.S. Van Dyke, it stars Clark Gable, Jeanette MacDonald, and Spencer Tracy. The Wikipedia describes it as a musical drama disaster film, but it's I wouldn't call it a musical. There is singing in it, but they're literally on stage. The only singing actually takes place on stage. So like a musical would be like if they were like walking through the streets of San Francisco singing, but the singing is expected because they're on stage. It is a disaster film though. It is about the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, but that doesn't really come into play until the last 20 minutes. In fact, the first time I watched it, I had heard that it was about that, and I didn't know when it was going to happen. And so, basically what happens is there's a story going on. They pretty much wrap up the story that they had written, and then the earthquake hits. It was kind of interesting because like I probably would have preferred if they like interrupted the story to have the earthquake hit to kind of make it more realistic, but it works. I think actually I don't think this is what happened. I was going to say what I think happened and then say like they did this movie unrelated to the 1906 earthquake, and then they were like, hey, let's make it memorable by throwing in an earthquake at the end. But there's references to the date throughout the movie, and it's not like now where you can just like edit and post. You could edit and post back then, but it's not like now where you can just like CG something and it's like, oh, that wasn't there before. And like I said, I knew it was about the earthquake, but because I was thinking it's 1936. How good could that effect be? I thought maybe they were going to like shake the camera and the actors go, it's an earthquake. But no, they went all out. This was like a really good effect. What they did was they actually they like broke apart buildings, the ground rips open, like there's pipes spewing water, and it gets really intense all of a sudden. And yeah, like it goes from like it's a love story, quote unquote. It's a love triangle, but like the characters, like there's two guys, Clark Gable and Spencer Tracy. This girl comes into town, and they meet her, Jeanette MacDonald, and she's a singer. Clark Gable and Spencer Tracy both own different clubs. Jeanette she's a singer, and both of them want her to be exclusively singing at their clubs. And yeah, they both fall in love with her and both propose to her. But it's a little annoying because they literally only know her for a couple days. And at least the movie makes it seem like it's only been a few days. I don't know if there's really any indication that, weeks and months have gone by. And like she walks in, he hires her, and right away, Clark Gable is he's in the movie. He's kind of perceived as he's shown to be kind of a jerk and like an awful person, but everyone likes him. And I actually made a post about this on Facebook a few years ago, and I I actually looked it up, and I'm going to read that post. As I said, this was back in 2021. 2022. I am watching San Francisco, the 1936 Clark Gable classic about the 1906 earthquake. This film did not age well. Clark Gable's character owns this club, and when he walks in, everyone clearly likes him. Then this girl approaches him, and he says, "I thought I told you not to wear this." And he yanks the necklace off her neck. His character's name is Blackie, and he says, "Remember, Blackie doesn't like this." A couple of minutes later, another girl comes in asking for a job. That would be Jeanette. Clark Gable asks what she can do. She says, "Sing." He says, "Show me your legs." She says, "I said I could sing." He says, "I heard you the first time. Show me your legs." This is less than 10 minutes into an almost 2-hour movie. Clark Gable is looked at as a desirable figure that everyone wanted. If he could do that and still be thought of that way, I'm glad society grew past that. Wait, why am I surprised? Wait. No, I hit enter there for some reason. Wait, why am I so surprised by this? Am I not forgetting his line in Gone with the Wind? 3 years later. No, I don't think I will kiss you. Although, you need kissing. Badly. That's what's wrong with you. You should be kissed, and often, and by someone who knows how. Yikes. Those are the kind of characters he played back then. And I was complaining about it at the time, because I was only like 10 or 20 minutes into the movie, and then I realized at the end, I actually left a comment on that post. I forgot to screenshot the comment, but basically I realized after the movie, oh, that was the point. He goes through after the disaster, he goes through a character growth. Throughout the whole movie, every time someone mentions God or praying or anything, there's one of the main characters as a priest, and every time somebody talks about going to church or there's the priest, he mocks religion. He's like, "Oh, that hogwash stuff, that fairy tale fantasy stuff. You have your fantasy world, I'll have mine." And at the end, he gets on his knees and prays, and so like he goes through like a whole character arc throughout the whole movie. And like I was commenting on how he acts at the beginning, it's as if characters don't go through character arcs. However, that is kind of a thing. That way of acting was popular back then. It's seen as acceptable, which is kind of frustrating. But like it kind of reminds me of Casablanca in a way, because Rick owns a cafe, and he walks in. He's not really a jerk though. He's just very like emotionless and stern and very likable. Everyone respects this guy, but he walks in. And he's kind of similar to Clark Gable's character, except Clark Gable's character in this movie I just see him as an awful person at the beginning. Rick is trying to do the right thing, I guess. And then I was thinking maybe this movie was trying to copy Casablanca because Casablanca was a very popular movie, so of course they're going to try to copy that. But then I remembered this movie came out a few years before Casablanca. Is it possible Casablanca was copying San Francisco? It's not even just this scene, because there was a scene whenever Spencer Tracy's character, I think his name is Burley, he came in and he wanted to buy the contract. He wanted to because Blackie, Clark Gable, he contracted her like right then as soon as he saw her, and Burley came in and was like, "I want a contractor. Let me buy your contract off of you." And Clark Gable goes, "Tell you what, I'll give you her contract for free if she wants to go." And so he walks up to her. They both walk up to her and ask her, and she's like, "I'm happy right here." And so she stays. And there's a similar scene in Casablanca where somebody walked up to Rick and was like, "Hey, I'll buy Sam off of you." He was like, "Oh, he's not for sale." "Well, I'll hire him off of you." "Oh, that's up to him." And he'll pay Sam. He'll pay you double. Like I don't have time to work. Spend what I make here. So there were like similar scenes. So like if this came out after Casablanca, I'd say this was clearly ripping them off. So I'm wondering, because like there's other scenes that I was like, wait, that's like Casablanca. So I'm wondering if Casablanca actually took cues from this movie, or if those are just popular shows of the time. So that's just something I thought was kind of interesting. Overall, the movie's really good. I like it. It's like I said, it's my second time watching it, and I have recommended other people watch it. The problem, unfortunately, is that it's not streaming anywhere. When I watched it the first time, it was on Max. Well, it was on HBO Max at the time. It was a few years ago. Now they rebranded. It's Max now. It's not streaming anywhere. Not even on Hoopla. And yeah. So I had to buy it on Blu-ray. It is available on Blu-ray. So it is popular enough to get a Blu-ray cut, and it does look really good. There are some features on it. I didn't watch all of them. There's a couple documentaries. Okay, so you have a movie about the 1906 earthquake starring Clark Gable. There was one documentary on it. What do you think the documentary's about? That's right, Clark Gable. Now, I would have made it about the 1906 earthquake, but hey, to each their own, I guess. But it was streaming once, so maybe it'll stream again. I think if anyone was to stream it, I think doesn't TCM have a streaming service? I believe they did at one point. I'm going to stall while I look. It doesn't look like they do. They did at one point. I was subscribed to it, and I would watch movies occasionally, but then like I don't anymore. Oh, they have a podcast. TCM has a podcast. It's called The Plot Thickens. It's on season 5. Decoding John Ford. So I guess each season has a theme. 7-part series that dives into the tough personality. Okay. But yeah. Anyway, I think if anyone was to have it streaming ever, it would probably be TCM. But they don't have a streaming service anymore. Maybe if Screen Gems has a streaming service, I don't know. I think Criterion. So there's plenty of streaming services that have older movies, older black and white. Sometimes like a lot of silent. I think pretty much every silent film is in the public domain at this point, for the most part, a vast majority of them at least. And so I think for the most part, like you can find most of those on YouTube or like any streaming services. I know there's some of those free streaming services that snag up a bunch of those old public domain movies. I don't think this one's in the public domain though, so this may not be in that. That's probably why I had to buy it on Blu-ray instead of watching it on YouTube. I did look, it's not on YouTube. But I feel like if it was to ever be streaming anywhere, it would be on one of those lesser known older movie streaming services. I see a bunch of them. Like a lot of them are free and like with ads, and I don't like them because, you know, ads are annoying. So yeah, I could have, there's so many free streaming services I could use, but I don't like them because they're free, yes, but they'll put an ad every 5 minutes, and there'll be like a 5-minute ad break with like multiple ads, and then another 5 minutes, and it'll just cut in the middle of a sentence. It doesn't even make sense. It's free, but at what cost? You know? But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. This movie, really good. I like it. I think this is the oldest movie I'm covering this season. I can't think off the top of my head. I have most of the season planned out. Yeah, definitely not the oldest movie I've covered throughout the whole podcast. Because I did cover The Wind, which is a silent film. This is not that old. There is a movie older than that I'm planning on covering, but it won't be this season. Yeah, I have a long list of movies to cover that I want to get to, but I'm not. I only have so many movies I can cover in a season. But anyway, yeah, I think that's everything. I didn't have a whole lot of notes for this movie. It's the story is. I hate to call it a simple story, but it literally takes place over the course of a couple days, and it's like one of the weakest love stories I've seen. Like, it's not even a love story. Like, they barely know each other. None of them even know each other, and then the earthquake hits, and yeah, I feel like they slapped some story together to put the earthquake at the end. I think they should have had the earthquake hit in the middle, because like this, I didn't even care who she ended up with, or if she ended up with anybody, because that's how weak the story feels. It's kind of like, let's get to the earthquake. So what they should have done was kind of have the earthquake happen in the middle of the story. Like, I even think there's like a specific part that I was thinking of, because like I'd seen it before, I knew when exactly it happened, but I was watching it this time. I'm like, this would be a perfect time for the earthquake to happen, because like she's kind of in between, like, who do I like, which one do I choose, and then the earthquake hits, and then she has to like go through the everything, but like that's not when it happens. The story just they conclude the story they had set out to tell, and then the earthquake happens, which is kind of frustrating. It'd be like if you go through the 3-hour Pearl Harbor movie with the whole fictional love story, and then in the last 20 minutes Pearl Harbor gets attacked, and then the movie ends. Like, why do we sit through this? I do think that there should be a new movie. There have been talks for a while to do a new one called 1906. There is a book called 1906. I don't remember if it's fiction or if it's nonfiction, but I remember the thing that stood out to me was that it was a it was a Disney Pixar movie, but like it was also kind of a misleading headline. It says Disney Pixar in talks to make a 1906 movie. And I was like, what? But no, it was going to be like 20th Century Fox or something. It was going to be like an actual like live action movie with funding from Pixar. It was going to be like their first live action, but like they weren't making it, they were just funding it, or so. It was confusing, but that ended up not being made. And there was a podcast I listened to about the 1906 earthquake. It was like a 15-part podcast documentary thing, and there were so many little stories going on during that. It wasn't just like earthquake, fires. No, there were so many little individual stories going on. It was a very personal, intimate look into the whole thing, and there was so much. It's very well documented, and there's so many different stories they could tell without having to make up a Jack and Rose. And I think that they should do that. And with I use Titanic as an example. With Titanic, they told a fictional love story, but they incorporated a lot of real life events into that, like the kid with the yo-yo on deck, and then like the lifeboats coming on top of each other, and the guy cutting the rope. So like those actually happened. They just put them in the movie. They kind of mix them in with the fictional story, and they should do that. If they do a new movie about 1906, they should do that. Even if they do tell a fictionalized story with a fictional couple, they're going to make it a love story. You know they're going to. They should incorporate all that. I think my favorite story was I think it's kind of well known that during the earthquake, during the fire that was going on, they were detonating a bunch of buildings to stop the fire. Kind of like a fight fire with fire. Kind of like when there's a forest fire, they'll start a fire to use up that to kind of stop the other fire. You know what I mean? Hopefully you know what I mean. There was a bunch of buildings that were demolition. They were detonated with dynamite to try to contain the fires. But there was this one building, they called it Monkey Block, and the mayor's, I believe it was the mayor's daughter, actually, they were about to blow it up, and it was a very historically significant building, and the mayor's daughter actually herself personally went down there and like put a stop to it. She was like, no, you will not destroy this building. She like stood in front of it, and they were like, you need to move, you're like really important and we don't want to hurt you. And she was like, I will not move. Or I'm probably telling the story wrong, but it was on the podcast and I heard it like a year ago, so like I don't even remember the name of the podcast. I've switched podcasting apps since then, so like I don't even remember the name of it. But yeah, like that definitely should be included. That story also kind of makes me mad now because like I said, I live in San Francisco, and when I was listening to this podcast and I heard that story about Monkey Block, I was like, oh, I've never heard of that. Where is it? And so I looked it up. I was like, I want to go see this building, this very historically significant building, to the point where the mayor's daughter stood in front of it and stopped it from being demolished by dynamite after it survived an earthquake. Where is this building, and can I go see it now? And I got mad when I found out what happened, because that was 1906, and in 1959 it was demolished, and the location that building stood, that location I actually have been to many times. It's a very famous location. You want to know what's sitting in that location now? Transamerica Pyramid. Literally, it's not near the spot. They demolished Monkey Block, and in that location, well, they didn't demolish it for the Transamerica Pyramid. That wasn't built till 1971. They put a parking lot there. They demolished it for a parking lot, and then they built Transamerica Pyramid in the spot that the Monkey Block was in. And so for a long time, I was actually kind of mad at that building. Like it's the building's fault. Like, it's sentient, and it's like, hey, it's your fault that building was destroyed. My point is, if they make a 1906 movie, they need to incorporate that into it. They need to incorporate a lot of those personal stories into it. This movie, the San Francisco movie from 1936, it did not really. It did in a way, but like, because it was 30 years after, they actually made it exactly 30 years after, which when I realized that last night, it kind of upset me. I was like, okay, now I'm upset, because I realized in 1906 to 1936, that's 30 years, obviously. It seems like a long time. If they were to make a movie now set the same amount of time, it would be taking place in 1995, and that's when I almost threw something. I was like, oh, come on. So yeah, not a fan. Actually 1994, because it's 2024, but still, it's still not funny. So even though it took place, they made it 30 years later. I don't know if it was like, if they just didn't like showing certain things back then, but like, because like I said, the last 20 minutes of the movie is the earthquake and the aftermath and everything. So it was very. They didn't show like actual like personal stories. They showed kind of a general overview type thing, like, oh, a building fell on someone. They didn't shy away from showing death and destruction, because like you would think, it showed like a little girl. She's probably, I want to say like 6. It shows her looking up and a building started to fall, and I'm thinking, oh, someone's going to stoop in and rescue her. No one saved her. I'm like, oh wow, this movie, it went there. And it didn't actually show her getting crushed to death by bricks. It implied it, very strongly implied it. But yeah, like, it didn't shy away from that stuff. It did show like buildings falling over, the old city hall coming apart. Like I said, the ground ripping open, people falling in. So it did show that, but none of like the personal stories like you can like point to, like, oh yeah, that's Mayor da da da, and that's him doing this, or that's whatever person, and that's what a new version would do. I think part of it was at that time there were still people alive that remembered it, so now they would probably be able to get away with showing the more personal aspects of the event. Actually, I haven't even looked this up. I should probably look it up and see what the progress of that movie is. 1906. Novel. Oh, there is. Oh, it is a novel. It's a 2004 American historical novel. He pitched it to Hollywood in 1998 for a film of the same name. Potential film adaptation. Oh, okay. The estimated budget of the film adaptation was $200 million. Due to the massive size and scale of the project, the film was being financially backed by Walt Disney Pictures, Pixar, and Warner Brothers. The project would have been the first time Pixar had been involved in a live-action film, and the first collaboration between Disney and Warner since The Prestige in 2006. Brad Bird, he was announced as the director. That was cool. He paused his work on the project after being approached by Pixar a notification popped up. After being approached by Pixar management to direct and co-write the 2007 animated film Ratatouille. He gave up on 1906 to direct Ratatouille. Honestly, that's a good call. Let's see, let's scroll down, skip all this. In June 2018, Brad Bird mentioned the possibility of adapting the book as a TV series and the earthquake sequence as a live-action feature film. So basically, what I think what they mean there is they would have a TV show about life in like 1905 San Francisco, and you get to know these characters, like fall in love with these characters, and then they'll have a movie. Like after like a season or two, they'll have a movie where the earthquake hits, and that would actually be better. It would have like a more emotional impact than just like a regular disaster film where they just set up a bunch of people that I wouldn't even call them characters. Just they throw people on screen and be like, "Hey, I'm a person," and then they die, and you're like, "Oh, that sucks." Okay, moving on. But if you spend a season or two with these characters, getting to like them, and then you kill off half of them, that would actually be interesting. Also, if it wasn't for him saying the film adaptation of the earthquake part, and the earthquake would be the show itself, maybe earthquake would be in like episode 5 or something, episode 3. Get to know the characters in a few episodes, the earthquake kids, and then the rest of the show would just be kind of be like the show 24, because like it didn't take that long to cover it. There's a lot going on. I don't know. Now I'm just kind of brainstorming. I'm just happy that oh wait, I was gonna say I'm happy this is probably gonna happen, but I just realized it said June 2018. That was a long time ago. But anyway, yeah, that was San Francisco, a 1936 film starring Clark Gable. I think I'll end the episode here. And cut.